In today's video, we're going to be exploring some of the teams that might be the most likely to explore the offer sheet this offseason. Of course, RFAs that are yet to be signed can be subject to offer sheets from other teams. Today, we're taking a look at some of the top RFAs that are most likely to consider this option and some of the teams that are most likely going to be trying to pry players away from other teams through that method. We'll discuss that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're taking a look at the most likely candidates this year to be facing an offer sheet. Of course, restricted free agents that want to consider jumping ship or to get their contract settled maybe a little sooner can consider offer sheets from other teams. Of course, now there's not every single restricted free agent is eligible and qualifies for this. There are a few exceptions to the rules. You do have to have a certain number of games played experience to be something that would be considered for that. And also players that are a little bit older and have arbitration rights that can file for that once they do. If they go down that route, they're not subject or eligible anymore to sign an offer sheet once arbitration has been filed. So obviously that kind of whittles down a little bit. And of course, really not all teams are going to be looking at players obviously to consider offer sheeting them if the team that they're on has a ton of cap space and they're pretty certain they would match. Obviously, you have to usually overpay to make it even worth your while. Of course, we saw last year the St. Louis Blues prying Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg away from the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers were in a real tough cap situation. They kind of drug on a situation there where they were unsigned for a while, and the Blues pounced on the opportunity, knowing that Edmonton very well was in a spot where they probably couldn't really match. So they able to get a couple of players for not a steep price, and then they had phenomenal years with the Blues. So seeing on that, teams are looking at this now and saying, okay, maybe we should be using this tool a little bit more. So before we jump into some of the players that are most likely to be approached for offer sheets and talk about some of the teams that are more likely to be the ones on the aggressor side of this, let's first take a look at the compensation rules. So for an eligible RFA to sign an offer sheet, obviously you get a couple things to keep in mind here. One, the player has to sign it. Any team can approach an RFA and present an offer sheet. If they're not interested or they don't want to leave their team and they don't sign it, then it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't go anywhere. So not all players are going to be, using this, right? So obviously there is that. The player has to sign it first and foremost. And then of course the teams that they're on will have 7 days to match or to say that they're not matching. And then the other team who offer sheet it gets the player and will pay the appropriate amount of compensation. So the compensation tiers change from year to year depending on the salary cap. So let's take a look at the compensation rules for offer sheets for 2025. Now, anything under $1.544 million, there is no compensation. Generally, something that small you would think would be matched in most cases anyway, rather than lose the player. The first level of tier that has compensation is between $1.54 million up to $2.34 million, which is only a third round pick. After that, it goes from $2.34 million up to $4.68. The compensation for that's only a second rounder. The next tier is $4.68 to $7.02 million, which is a first and a third. So think about it. You could get a $7 million player if you're successful and only give up a first and a third. It's really not that bad. Next up, we've got $7.02 million to $9.36 million. The compensation's a round pick, a second round pick, and a third round pick. So 3 picks, and you're up to over $9.3 million. I mean, that's still, for a player in today's NHL, that's really not that bad when you think about it. $9.36 million to $11.7 million is 2 first round picks, a second, and a third. So again, you can get over an $11 million player for 4 picks. It's really not that terrible when you think about it. But of course, like I said, you have to be strategic to make sure that it's going to be successful. And of course, anything over $11.7 million becomes 4 first rounders. That's probably not something we're going to see. To be completely honest, I think the $11.7 million and over tier for 4 first rounders is probably a hard no. I'd be shocked if we've seen that. I really don't think we're going to see any on the bottom tier under $1.5 million either. I think the most likely scenarios really is all the other ones. Anything from, that 2.3 range where you can give up a second rounder, upwards of, that 9.3 to 11.7 million where you give up 2 firsts, a second, and a third. So that's your compensation if you're successful as a team offer sheeting another player that's a restricted free agent. Now, which players are the most likely to consider this? Well, for one, you want to look at players that are on teams that are in kind of tight cap situations and predicaments that they may not be able to pay the player what they're worth. For example, number one I'm going to talk about is Evan Bouchard. Bouchard's 25 years old, one of the top young offensive defensemen in the game. Having look at the playoff stats he's had to Oilers the past couple of years, phenomenal. I mean, he's going to clearly be able to demand big money from Edmonton, and I have no doubt that the Oilers have every intention of wanting to sign him and keep him. But if things are dragging on too long and he, is not getting what he wants, maybe a team swoops in here. Now, Bouchard, where he's 25, he's at a stage in his RFA career that he's arbitration eligible. So he could choose to file for arbitration and eliminate this possibility. Now, teams can also file for arbitration. Doesn't have to be the player. And then again, it takes this method or this tool off the table. So Bouchard's definitely one to consider. We saw the Oilers be attacked last year. Can you imagine if you could get him at just shy of at the max category, $11.7 million? I'd give up 2 firsts, a second, and a third for Evan Bouchard. I mean, really, for what he brings, that he could play with your team for the next 10 years. Really, that's not that bad of a compensation package, in all honesty. So I think Evan Bouchard, because of the tight cap situation with Edmonton, because he is arbitration eligible, makes it a little bit less likely, but it is something that they need to be fearful of, especially after last year. You got J.J. Peterka with the Buffalo Sabres, 23 years old, coming off his rookie contract, making under $1 million, put up 27 goals, and we know that he's not happy in Buffalo. If the Sabres are kind of at this point rumored to be getting a lot of talk around trading him, and they're not crazy about it, but the latest reports indicate that even though they're not real thrilled about it, they don't really want to do it, but they're at a spot where they're listening and they feel like they might have to. But they're also at a point where they could be prone to this. They have a situation where they have a lot of decisions to make, and they could, if Peterka were to sign one early in free agency, can you imagine offering him like $9 million and you have to give up a first, second, and third, $9 million for a 30-year-old or 30 goal scoring 23-year-old? That's really not that bad. And then you put Buffalo in a tight spot to consider matching a $9 million contract. They may not want to go there, but he's going to be more prone to sign one because we know he wants to leave. You got Marco Rossi in Minnesota, another guy. Obviously 24 goals and 60 points this past year, second leading scorer. Seems like there's a major disagreement on the contract between him and Minnesota, how things should look. Finishing his rookie contract, he was rumored to be looking for like a 6x6 type of deal. If you want to up that a little bit and take him over, over either to the $7.02 million max, so you give up a first and a third, or I don't know if any team would go above that, but that's still more than he's looking for. So again, Minnesota doesn't have the best cap situation. They're a little bit more flexible than they were in the last few years, but still, if they're not really crazy about signing him to 6x6, are they going to want to go over 7? Probably not. So there is that. So Rossi's definitely a candidate. You've got Matthew Knies in Toronto, and I have every right to think that Knies wants to remain with the Maple Leafs. And this might be less likely just because he really wants to stay, and maybe he won't even entertain it. But for a 29 goal scorer coming off his rookie contract, making under $1 million, really, if you think that Knies has potential to be a consistent 30 to 40 goal man and be that power forward unicorn type player that's hard to find, would you not think, and especially if you offered him a long-term deal, let's say if you got him for 7 or 8 years and you can get him to sign with you for, say, $11.7 million. If you're confident he's going to keep up those numbers in a few years, that'd be, might be an overpayment for the first few, and then would level out if he continues to be the player you think he's going to be. Give up 2 firsts, a second, and a third. I think there's teams out there that would consider that. Now, of course, like I said, Toronto still might match. Hard to say. They want to keep the player. I have no doubt he wants to be there. But they've got a lot going on in Toronto between the Marner UFA status, they got Tavares. There's just a lot, right? So Could a team try to swoop in and take advantage of that? Like I said, I don't know how eagerly Knies would want to play ball, but even though he might not be thinking he wants to, suddenly there's a contract offer in front of him for over $11 million, and if the Leafs are talking 7, that's a huge gap. That's a lot of money to say no to. So we'll see. Will Cuylle with the New York Rangers, another prime target, 20-goal scorer, 45 points. Rangers are in a tough cap situation. It just got a little bit better trading Chris Kreider, but still a lot of tough decisions to make there in the Big Apple. Would you be willing to give him, say, $6 million and give up a first and a third? I think a lot of teams would. It puts the Rangers in a tough spot, so I'm sure that's not an amount they would prefer to pay him, at least not yet. So Will Cuylle is definitely going to be a player to watch. As far as offer sheets go as well, I think another Buffalo player besides Peterka could be Jack Quinn. To me, Quinn and his teammate Bo Byrom, I think there's multiple Sabres guys that would be interested in getting a contract to skip town. And we know they've heard lots of rumors about them being available for trade. So why not try to force their hand? Quinn put up 15 goals, 39 points. Would the Sabres want to pay him $4 or $5 million? And, where you only have to give up either a second rounder or a first and a third. I mean, for a former first rounder who's still coming into his own and has, pretty good second line potential. Like, again, I think Quinn's a player to watch. Byrom had 38 points, made $3.8 million last year, wants to be a top tier defenseman. I'm not sure what it would take to sign him, but if you could get him between $7 and $9 million, the 7.02 to 9.36 range for a first, second, and third, I think teams would pay that for Byrom. You could really attack the Sabres here with some of the teams that have. There's teams like the Ducks and the Blackhawks and a few others that they have oodles and oodles and oodles of space. You could do the same scenario that the Blues did on the Oilers and attack multiple players at once and really force their hand. We'll see, but I think Peterka, Byrom, and Quinn are all targets here for some teams. Nick Hague in Vegas. Vegas is a very tight cap situation. They're rumored to be in on Marner. They're going to have to create space to get Marner if they're going to be successful. I don't think it's going to take a huge money contract to get Hague. Coming off a contract, paying him $2.2 million. Defensive style defenseman, doesn't put up a lot of points. Maybe you get him for the 2.34 to 4.68 range for a second round pick. I mean, I think teams would do that too, right? You get Maverick Bourque in Dallas, another candidate for an offer sheet. Super tight cap situation with the Stars. 25 points in his rookie contract, making $8.94 last year. Would you offer him even $2.5 million for a second round pick? Or even 2.34 for a third round pick? Dallas would be in a tough spot to come up and match that. I mean, there's lots of other big name RFAs out there. I just think some of them are less likely to be going into this offer sheet. Like Noah Dobson's another big name RFA, are eligible though, so that could get cooled off that way. And I think the Islanders are more likely to be able to get him signed. They're not quite as bad of a cap situation, so I think Dobson's less likely, but one of the top RFAs to watch out there. A guy like Luke Hughes in New Jersey, I mean, he loves playing with his brother. I think they're hoping to get Quinn there in a couple of years. I don't see Luke Hughes entertaining an offer sheet at all. I don't think that's going to be an issue. Morgan Geekie in Boston might be a wild card here because as much as I think the Bruins want to keep him, I'm kind of surprised that they don't have a contract in place as of yet. Put up 33 goals last year, making $2 million. Definitely going to be looking for a raise. But again, he's somebody who's ARB eligible, so they could end up in arbitration on a 1-year deal, which could walk him right to unrestricted free agency, and it might not even be something that we can consider at this point. But he's going to be another unique RFA to watch. Mason McTavish in Anaheim is going to be interesting, coming off his rookie contract, put up 52 points. Although, I think the Ducks have so much cap space that I don't think they would be in jeopardy to lose a player. They're not going to let a guy walk, especially somebody who's that important to them like McTavish. So, again, we'll see. K-Andre Miller, the Rangers, another player. He's rumored to be traded, so I think that they'd probably pull a trade off before we get to that level. But somebody who's making 3.8, the speculation is the Rangers don't want to pay the next contract for what he's looking for. He's probably going to be up in the 5-6 range. I think that's probably what he's looking for here on a new deal, and he's more likely to get traded. So we'll see. I know Elliot Friedman's made mention about Jack McBain with Utah. Hard to say how that goes. Only making $1.5 million, 27 points last year. Good, third, fourth liner. So a good another player to watch there as well. I know there's Luke Evangelista in Nashville. The Preds they're not super tight on space, but they did spend a lot of money last year. So they're going to probably be cautious, trying to get younger. So Evangelista is a guy that should want to stick around. Put up 32 points, making under $800K. So I think he's less likely. Just like I said, he's a good RFA. Interesting scenario, but otherwise there's other players out there too. But those are kind of your top guys. Like I said, I think Bouchard, Peterka, Rossi, Knies, Cuylle, Quinn, Byrom, Bork, Miller, Hag. Like those are your guys I think are most likely targeted. And I'm not sure how many of these we're going to see. I think lots of teams are going to kick tires. Lots of teams are going to consider it. But we'll see what happens. The Rangers, even though I have some of their players on the team here, the space they got from Chris Kreider, there's some talk because they are obviously rumored to be trading Miller. The Will Cuylle one is probably a little bit less likely now that they've moved Kreider because they do have more flexibility. But the flexibility they've picked up from the Kreider trade, something that they are going to be open to looking at offer sheeting to other players too. So interesting on that. You get the Flyers and the Flames are a couple teams to watch as well. The Ducks have tons of space. The Sharks have tons of space. So teams like that are definitely teams to watch when it comes to who could present the offer sheet. There's definitely like lots of teams that we talked about that are really tight where it's not going to be teams like that. Some speculation about Montreal, but I don't think that we're really going to see that. They're looking for a number 2 center and possibly a right side defenseman, but again, I don't know that that's really all that likely to see the Habs use this tool here. So, we've heard a lot about the Flames and the Flyers, except to some degree the Anaheim Ducks as well, to some degree the Rangers, and really, otherwise, there's other teams too. Look at anybody with the amount of cap space they have. Columbus would be another team to watch as well. Wouldn't completely rule out Carolina again. Obviously after the Rantanen fiasco, maybe they, kind of turn their targets to more of a younger target here. Some of the guys we talked about, although, maybe they go after a guy like Peterka. Gabe Vilardi's another name to watch in Winnipeg too. I think he'll likely get a deal done with the Jets, and it's not going to be an issue for them. But if things drag on there, that's possible there as well. But Vilardi would also be ARB eligible, which should reduce the likelihood of that happening. But again, lots of interesting RFAs out there. The compensation to me is reasonable. So those are your top players that I feel are most likely, and some of the teams that you're most likely going to see use that tool. So to me, let me know down in the comments, which players do you think are most likely to be be offered an offer sheet, and who could actually sign it and make things interesting this offseason? Which teams are going to be the most aggressive and use that kind of tool here in your opinion? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.